në anglisht.
Për përkthim në shqip do përdori.
Jeni duke folur në kanalin e anglishtes, ndoshta do të shkoni te portugalisht. So good morning everyone.
Mirëmëngjes të gjithëve.
Rudina, më dëgjoni? Jeni duke folur në kanalin e anglishtes?
Jo, në portugeze kam.
Jo, unë jam në kanalin e anglishtes tani dhe ju jeni duke u dëgjuar nga të gjithë.
Rudina, you are using your second device instead of your first device, which is assigned as an interpreter. But your second device isn't assigned, so this is the confusion, I believe. Thanks. Problem solved, I think. Amari, we can go.
Okay, great. So, sorry about that.
Ju kërkoj ndjes për këtë.
Okay, Rudina, sërish dëgjoni në kanalin ton. Yep. Yes, Diana, please. Yes, we hear you, Nick. Perfect, thank you. Yes, please, that would be great, thank you. Okay, so I hope we don't have any more problems with the interpretation. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Regional LGBTI Intergovernmental Platform meeting. My name is Amarildo Fezzani. I am Executive Co-Director at ERA, which is the network that is organizing this very important meeting today. Our very first intergovernmental meeting was held, I believe, 5 years ago at this point in Pristina, when we had government officials and other partners and allies from state institutions gathering for the first time. So it is a great honor that we are continuing this very important tradition. I'm very sorry that we cannot have this important meeting in person, but nevertheless, technology is helping us to be together today. This event will be also broadcasted live on Facebook. So for those participants who remain invisible, not to be seen with their name or camera, please kindly turn them off, and I will now proceed with the live broadcasting. This panel will be co-moderated by my colleague Jelena Čolaković, who is also co-chair of ERA's steering board. Hello, Jelena. Maybe you want to say a couple of words.
Hi, I'm very glad that I will be able to moderate this meeting today with Amari. And it's a great pleasure always to have our biggest allies together with us at this particular meeting. It's very, very important for the community to have, the conversations with the allies in the governmental, but also in the donor community, that we can speak about the biggest challenges, but also some of the solutions that we to which we can contribute together.
Thank you very much, Jelena. So today with us, we have a lot of important representatives from the governments of our region. And I would like to thank all of them for making it to this meeting today. And very soon they're all going to speak with us and make their remarks. However, in order to do a bit of house duty, I think that it's appropriate for our other steering board co-chair, Daniel Kalezic, to make a welcoming remark to all of you, and to explain a little bit more the purpose of the meeting for today. So Daniel, the floor is yours.
Hvala puno Amari, hvala Jelena, dobar dan svima.
I should just explain the language interpretation. I apologize.
Yes.
Just
Okay.
maybe very briefly for those who just joined. Again, for those who want to hear Albanian interpretation, select Portuguese. For those who want to hear Serbian, Croatian, Montenegrin, Bosnian, please select Spanish. For Macedonian, select French. For Slovenian, select Korean. And for Turkish, select German. Sorry, Daniel.
No problem. Thank you, Amari, for this intervention. I will continue in our regional language, no matter the name that we are using for it. Dobar dan svima. Zadovoljstvo mi je da se mogu na početku obratiti svima vama ispred Saveza za jednaka prava, ERA, kao što znate, organizacije koja okuplja preko 70 LGBT organizacija sa prostora Zapadnog Balkana i Turske. I prije svega, dobar dan predstavnicima međunarodne zajednice koji su tu, uvaženim poslanicama, predstavnicima i ministrima i ministarkama i predstavnicima ministarstava, nadležnih institucija koje se bave ljudskim pravima LGBT osoba iz različitih zemalja koje su tu i naravno dobar dan našim prijateljima, prijateljicama i kolegama i koleginicama. Hvala što ste danas ovdje na ovom, ja bih rekao, veoma bitnom sastanku koji smo, kao što je Amari rekao, prethodnih godina organizovali uživo i nadamo se da ćemo ubrzo moći da nastavimo i na taj način, ali vjerujem da današnja diskusija neće biti manje produktivna, iako se dešava online i nemamo priliku da i mimo ovog sadašnjeg okupljanja malo ono što se kaže i neformalno proćaskamo i porazgovaramo o svim pitanjima od značaja za ljudska prava LGBT osoba na cijeloj teritoriji na kojoj je ERA kao krovna organizacija aktivna. Dakle, hvala što ste tu. Ja imam zadatak da sada dam neki uvodni komentar koji će poslužiti svima nama kasnije za diskusiju. Ja bih u ovom vremenu koje je za nama od perioda kada je počeo COVID i od prethodne konferencije, prethodnog ovog sastanka koji smo imali uživo, pa do danas volio da podijelim sa vama neki pregled u odnosu na to šta se generalno dešava u odnosu na naša ljudska prava u cijelom ovom regionu. Nažalost, svjedoci smo da i pored nekih pozitivnih stvari koje su slične unapređenju zakonskog okvira, u kojem bih izdvojio Crnu Goru kao zemlju koja je u tom periodu usvojila zakon o životnom partnerstvu lica istog pola, a mnoge stvari, nažalost, ili stagniraju ili idu unazad. I u odnosu na politički kontekst u zemljama, u cijelom regionu, u odnosu na jačanje ili predominantnost političkih snaga i struktura koje nemaju u svom fokusu primarno unapređenje ljudskih prava LGBT osoba, kao što nemaju ni u svom fokusu unapređenje prava žena, već naprotiv. Dakle, taj neki trend koji je u svijetu bio zabilježen tokom prethodnih nekoliko godina se definitivno reflektuje i na područje Zapadnog Balkana i područje koje ERA pokriva. U međuvremenu, kao što znamo, takođe se dogodio COVID koji se značajno negativno odrazio po samu LGBT zajednicu i u smislu ekonomskih konsekvenci i u smislu povećanja nivoa nasilja sa kojima se susrećemo i problemima sa kojima se LGBT zajednice iz tih razloga pojačano susreće u odnosu na druge društvene grupe. Takođe, ono što je obilježilo taj neki period unazad 2 godine za nama, a koji takođe treba da konstatujemo negdje i da razgovaramo o njemu, jesu donatorske politike koje su značajno promijenjene. O svim ovim stvarima će Amari i Jelena kasnije danas tokom rada detaljno razgovarati i detaljno će ih predstaviti u ovom drugom dijelu treninga. Ja se samo osvrćem na one koje su nekako od svih tih bile najznačajnije prekretnice i nešto čime vjerujem da treba da se bavim. Kad su donatorske politike u pitanju, ono što je tu interesantno i što bih volio da danas prodiskutujemo i sa nivoa država kao donatora, pošto svaka država ima programe podrške civilnom sektoru, ali i generalno u odnosu na sve donatorske politike jeste to što je osjetan jedan trend nedirektnog ukidanja u smislu pravila ili regulacija koje direktno ukidaju fondove grassroots organizacijama, već promjene strateškog pristupa u finansiranju aktivnosti koje su usmjerene na grassroots, odnosno community-based organizacije koje se bave pravima žena i pravima LGBT osoba, što je direktno jedna vrsta sabotiranja samog pokreta, onemogućavanja daljeg razvijanja LGBT pokreta i samim tim jedna od metoda kojom se usporava proces unapređenja ljudskih prava LGBT osoba. Dakle, mi imamo sa jedne strane neke stvari koje su dobre u smislu unapređenja zakonskog okvira, ali imamo puno stvari koje su ili na nivou stagniranja ili su pošle unazad u odnosu na ono što je neki prethodni period i od prethodnog puta kada smo se susreli na ovakvom jednom zastanku. Ono što ostaju dominantni problemi su govor mržnje, procesuiranje govora mržnje, zločini iz mržnje, procesuiranje zločina iz mržnje, generalno pristup pravdi i ja bih rekao da nam i dalje nedostaje nešto što je generalno jedan od najbitnijih stvari u cijelom pristupu kada su države i vlade u pitanju u odnosu na ljudska prava LGBT osoba, a to je pristup koji se ne bazira na EU integracijama, pristup koji se ne bazira na evroatlantskim putevima i tako dalje kao razlog ili kao motiv za postupanje vlada i rad vlada kada su unapređenje naših osnovnih ljudskih prava u pitanju, već pristup koji podrazumijeva to da se dominantno ovdje radi o ljudima, o ljudskim životima i da se radi iz razloga što i LGBT osobe kao i svi ostali ljudi u svakoj zemlji čine jedan dobar dio društva. Ja sam negdje promišljajući ovaj današnji sastanak brojao neke procente u odnosu na to o koliko ljudi govorimo. Ako uzmemo sve zemlje u kojima je ERA aktivna i iz kojeg ima organizacije članice, i ako uzmemo taj neki srednji procenat od 5%, to je u nekom društvu LGBT osoba, a govori se da između 3 i 10%, da uzmemo tu srednju cifru od 5%, mi govorimo o minimum 5,5 miliona ljudi za čija ljudska prava aktivno radi. Tu brojku moramo da uzmemo u obzir i kada god radimo i mi iz civilnog sektora i vlade koje su na krajnji donosioci odluka imaju najveću odgovornost u zaštiti prava svih građana i građanki, treba da imamo ovu brojku na umu. Radimo za ogroman broj ljudi i to nam je zajednička ogromna odgovornost. I moja poruka za kraj, da ne bih više širio, svakako ćemo imati prilike da diskutujemo i u ovom drugom dijelu, jeste da ono što je nama potrebno kao zajednici jesu jednaka prava, ali sa druge strane, na papiru naravno, ali sa druge strane potrebno nam je i da budemo jednako tretirani u odnosu na implementaciju svih tih prava i zakona i regulativa i potrebna nam je direktna podrška. Mi od riječi nemamo puno, od PR-a nemamo puno, od slikanja na Prideovima nemamo puno, nemamo ništa zapravo. Ako ćemo to da preslikamo na svakodnevni život, nama treba iskrena, direktna podrška zbog toga što ipak na kraju govorimo o tome da smo ljudi i zajednice i zajednica koje su pod kontinuiranom višestrukom diskriminacijom i nasiljem od trenutka kada se rodimo pa do ostatka svog života. To nikada ne smijemo da zaboravimo i jedan ljudski pristup, osim onog koji jeste formalno, pravno obaveza svake države, je nešto što nam je potrebno i direktna podrška. Hvala puno, želim svima produktivan rad danas i nastavljamo da diskutujemo u ovom drugom dijelu.
Danny, thank you so much. It was an amazing, actually, overview of the situation that we encounter every day in the region. Also, I have to say that 2 ministers that have been announced are still not here with us. They are saying that they will be late. So we are starting with Albania and Mr. Albert Nicola, the Deputy Minister of Health and Social Protection from Albania. Without further ado, Mr. Nicola, thank you for being with us here. And I hope that our colleagues from Albania will also engage into a conversation with you and all of us together to see how is the situation in your country. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jelena, and I would like to thank all of you, especially Biljana Ginova and Amarildo Fezzani, who have organized this very important meeting. And I'm really happy to be here today, but 2 words before I read my speech, because I have prepared my speech in Albanian together with my colleagues, because I am now heading a group that will prepare the new national strategic plan for the community LGBTI. And at the same time, we have analyzed the previous document starting from 2016-2020, and now we are preparing the next one, 2021-2027. I'm leading this group, and but I'm quite a new entry in the ministry because I have been appointed last year, and I am very happy because I cover the social area, social inclusion, because I have been working with the NGOs dealing with the civil society, and yes, I really find myself here quite well working with the people that deal with questions. So I will read the document because it's very important and has been prepared with my team. So from now on, I will shift in Albanian. Ministria e Shëndetësisë dhe e Mbrojtjes Sociale si autoritet përgjegjës I ka kushtuar vëmendjen dhe përpjekjet e duhura. Something is wrong?
I can't hear the translation. What about the others? We can't hear the translation for Serbian, Croatian, Montenegrin, and Bosnian.
May I continue?
Just a quick second. Thank you. So sorry, Mr. Nicola. We will be resuming hopefully soon, but can the translator for the interpreter for the Serbian, Croatian, Montenegrin, Bosnian, please just resume its work, because we can't hear anything, although we selected Spanish. So sorry, these are the things that Zoom is so bad about, especially because we have, you know, the fact that sometimes it's just stuck. Sorry. Okay. Can you, Mr. Nicola, can you resume also your speech and we will see whether the translation works? So sorry.
In Albanian or in English? In Albanian.
In Albanian, yes.
Okay. Ministria e Shëndetësisë dhe Mbrojtjes Sociale, si autoritet përgjegjës, koordinues, I ka kushtuar vëmendjen dhe përpjekjet e duhura krijimit të një mirë ndërmjet aktërave shtetëror dhe jo shtetëror, duke theksuar rolin rëndësishëm të shoqërisë civile, aktivistëve të drejtave të njerëzit, institucioneve dhe organizatave ndërkombëtare, medias, si dhe vetë personave e komuniteteve të personave LGBTI, në nxitjen dhe mbrojtjen e drejtave njerëzore të LGBTI-s dhe mundësive të barabarta të tyre në Shqipëri. Besojmë të gjithë grup pune, partneritet dhe bashkëpunimi i që na ka udhëhequr në rrugën e duhur, si dhe na ka pajisur me një uri dhe aftësitë e nevojshme për të adresuar sfidat që ndeshim ndërkohë dhe përpiqemi të bëjmë realitet për të drejtat e personave LGBTI. Në Shqipëri është shumë e rëndësishme të theksojmë se të drejtat dhe ligjit themelore të çdo individi garantohen në Kushtetutën e Republikës pa përshtim, dallim apo diskriminim për shkaqe individuale, përfshirë orientimin seksual dhe shprehjen e identitetit gjinor. Këto të drejta janë trajtuar më tej në ligje të veçanta, politika, strategji apo plane veprimi kombëtare dhe vendore. Por, siç e përmendi edhe Dani Kalezic, këto të drejta janë trajtuar më tej, por është fakt që në përditshmëri personat LGBTI ndeshen me një sër veprimesh paragjykuese dhe diskriminuese, shoqëruar edhe me gjuhë urrëtie, hera herës edhe me dhunë e lëndime. Barazia de jure pra, jo gjithmonë respektohet dhe shoqërohet me drejtësi de facto. Betejja kundër këtyre stereotipeve
Albert. The
Yes.
Slovenian translator is translating in the wrong channel. So they are translating in the English channel instead of the Slovenian, and the Slovenians in the room cannot hear the translation. And also it's
May I resume in English, and it will be easier
the
for
Slovenian
everybody?
translator should change the channel for translating.
Mr. Nicola, we are so sorry for these interruptions. If you don't mind, it would be amazing if you could continue in English, because
Yes.
also the translation in Serbian, Montenegrin, Croatian, and Bosnian is also kind of failing us today. So sorry. So if you don't mind continuing in
I will try to do my best, Jelena, because the speech in Albanian, so I have to resume paragraph after paragraph. So yes, I will do my best. I will do my best.
You can continue your speech when you were interrupted. From that point on, you can continue in English. You don't have to resume your whole speech. You don't just
So,
continue
so I will proceed in English or in Albanian?
in English if you don't mind.
Yes. Okay. So we are trying to do our best against these problems, and I think that the road is very long and difficult. But we are trying to do our best to change the mentality, because I think to do a great job towards the people, LGBTI people, I think both pillars are very important. In the first step is that Mr. Daniel mentioned very carefully and in a strong way, that it's important the human rights, but at the same time we have to create a new culture of acceptance for these persons that have the same dignity as anybody in Albania, anybody in the country. That's why we have prepared the National Action Plan 2016-2020. Nowadays, together, our working group, together with the civil society representatives and with the European organization and international organizations such as UN, we have been working together to look about this national action plan, how this plan has been developed in these years. And together we have concluded that this plan with conclusions, and starting from these conclusions, we will take present these conclusions in the new action plan 2020-2027. So, all in all, the first is the situation of the persons, of the groups of LGBT in the country is sensitively, decisively improved in the period 2016-2020. However, the group thinks that a major improvement is needed for the next period. We have had very important and radical improvements, especially in the juridical level, and but other changes to improve the situation will be undertaken in the family code, in the penal code, and other questions that deals with the gender identity. At the same time, in this previous strategy, a lot has been done to train and to prepare the workers that are dealing with in the national and the central level, and especially the workers that are working within the health sector, in the policy, and in the social, in the national social services, with different groups that we have all around the country, because we have a national social service in Albania, and this services has a ramification in 12 districts of the country. Another great job has been done, especially with the information activities, education activities, to raise the awareness for a new acceptance, a new culture, and to avoid the hate languages and discrimination against LGBT groups. The working group recommends that we have to empower again the specialized services, especially for the persons who has been a target of discrimination. Another question that we have evidenced is that we have to prepare not only the person that deals directly with the LGBT groups, but at the same time to organize trainings to create a new culture within the schools, especially in the elementary school and in the high school, because in that moment, I think that it is very important to create this new culture, to create and to put in mind every person that our dignity is equal for anybody. Nevertheless, the sexual orientation or other questions. So I think that all in all, we will take present as a working group, will take presence all this recommendation that together with the UN and European groups will put together in the new strategic plan 2021-2027. As soon as we will have this new strategic plan, I will be very happy to make you know and to send this national plan for the next 6 years. But to close my speech, please feel free to contact our ministry, to contact myself personally, because really, not only in the position of the deputy minister, but as a person, I will be always available to deal with this question, because there is no space for discrimination, no space for hate. The world needs only love. So thank you very much.
A beautiful message for your closing, for the closing of your speech, Mr. Nicola, and thank you so much. So sorry for the interruptions. And I plead also all the speakers to keep their contributions to 5 minutes, because we need time. We lack also time for this. All event will actually last for 2 hours, and it's not enough, but still, we are very, very glad to have you as speakers, primarily now from North Macedonia. One of the, as far as I know, and as far as my North Macedonian colleagues are saying to me, one of the biggest allies of the community, Ms. Mila Carovska, Minister of Education and Science in North Macedonia. Thank you for being with us, Mr. Minister and Mrs. Minister, and I hope that you will have a great contribution as well. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Jelena. Hi to all my friends and my colleagues. I think that it's really important to have this type of spaces where we can share best practices, but also, again, address the challenges that our countries are having because still we have a lot to do. I'm really happy because I remember when I was at a meeting before 5 years at ERA in Kosovo, I think. And at that meeting, we discussed what we need to do in our countries. But today we can share what we already done in the countries. And I think the big steps are already done, but we have a few more that needs to be implemented if we want to live in equal societies. I want to address a few things that are already implemented in the country. This is the new law for anti-discrimination, and it's functional. We have a functional commission in this moment, and I hope that this commission will give a really big contribution in creating the atmosphere of respect and non-discrimination in the country. Also, the important thing is that we ratify the Istanbul Convention, and we're developing the services, and finally the country is paying about services that are addressed in this Istanbul Convention. It was not case before this government, and I'm really happy because of that. The first LGBTI shelter center is financed in part, not fully financed, but in part is financed by the budget. Also, we done a lot in promoting the equality in a media space. We have a pride, and pride is protected by the police. We have a lot of people that are not part of the community, but they are supporting, and they are out of the streets, and we are openly present the need of equal society and society for all. Educational system is the basic, I must say, a fundament of the society that really respects each other, and the society where we have equal opportunity for everybody, and all citizens needs to feel themselves respected, and that they are they're living in the society. That's why we create a new concept for primary education, where gender equality is a main pillar. We have inclusiveness, we have a gender equality, and we have interculturality. And this shows that really this government, but also supported by the progressive part of the society, this concept will give opportunity to build next generation that will respect each other, and that they will respect diversities. Because if we just learn that the diversities in the country is something that give a value to the country and the system, in that moment I think that we can say that we achieve really the result of our 10-year, already 10, maybe more than that, 10-year fight that we have with institutions, but also with some part of the society. I'm happy because I see Biljana and Igor here, Snezhana, and we work together a lot in opposition, and now we are in the government. It really shows that we are committed to the issue of equality, and I'm really happy. I'm really happy of that. Thank you a lot. You have a lot of support from my side, and I'm sure that we can have better results in the next period. Thank you.
Ms. Minister, thank you so much for your contribution. It's always a pleasure to listen to you. And also you mentioned something very, very important, like a good example from Macedonia. It comes a kind of a, I would say, I would like to say that it could be a motivation to all the other governments to support the services that are facing issues with their sustainability, especially the services that are targeting LGBTI community, which are not provided by the government itself. So it's very, very important. The things that you said, I hope, as I said, I hope that it's going to be a good example for all your colleagues in the region. Now, I presume that Ms. Tomic still didn't arrive. Biljam? Okay, so we proceed, and it's my great pleasure to announce Ms. Mirjana Vlahovic, Head of the Division for Anti-Discrimination Policies from the Ministry of Justice, Human and Minority Rights from my country, and that is Montenegro. So, Ms. Vlahovic, please, the floor is yours.
Dobar dan, da li se čujemo? Jako mi je veliko zadovoljstvo što danas prisustvujem ovom veoma važnom za sve nas događaju i što imam priliku da predstavim rezultate, razmenim iskustva i podelim neke sumnje koje imam, znači, vezano za ostvarivanje svih ovih naših aktivnosti vezano za Crnu Goru. Na početku želim da kažem da je Crna Gora puno toga postigla kada je u pitanju zakonodavni okvir. Biću kratka pošto sve treba da stane u 5 minuta. Kao što znate, mi smo prošle godine doneli zakon o životnom partnerstvu osoba istoga pola koji je počeo da se implementira ove godine 15. jula i odmah smo se na početku susreli sa puno poteškoća obzirom da na vreme nismo harmonizovali nekih 20-ak zakona koje je trebalo, znači, uskladiti sa ovim zakonom. Međutim, ovaj zakon je stupio na snagu, može da se koristi uz naravno naše velike napore da što pre završimo sa, znači, tim svim započetim poslovima. Kada je u pitanju Ministarstvo pravde, ljudskih i manjinskih prava, u ovoj godini mi ćemo, znači, harmonizovati 5 zakona. Većinski se oni tiču krivične procedure, znači to je krivični zakonik, zakon o krivičnom postupku, zakon o obligacionim odnosima, zakon o parničnom postupku i zakon o vanparničnom postupku. Ovo je više informacija za kolege iz nevladinog sektora, naprosto da vide dok smo stigli. A kada su druga ministarstva koja trebaju da promene svoje zakone i sa njima smo u kontaktu i oni također rade na svemu tome. Međutim, naravno mi smo imali godinu dana da sve ove zakone dovedemo u red i prilično kasnimo sa čitavom ovom procedurom, tako da se nadam da ćemo u budućem nekom periodu napraviti taj korak i omogućiti da se ovaj zakon na kome smo dugo radili, čini mi se vrlo ga kvalitetno i odradili, dobio svoju punu primjenu. Ono što bih željela sada da vas obavestim jeste da smo mi ušli u proces, odnosno uskoro ćemo formirati radnu grupu vezanu za nacrt jednog novog zakona, to je pravno prepoznavanje roda na osnovu samoodređenja, što nam je jako važno jer samim tim ćemo zaokružiti tu našu antidiskriminacionu legislativu. I ovo je jedan veliki korak za nas, ono što su neke naše sumnje i neki naši, kako da kažem, neke, kako da kažem, evo bolje da sam rekla i na engleskom, challenges, znači šta nam je ono što... Izazove, tako, izvinite. Izazovi su nam sada da nađemo otvorenog duha pravnike koji će nam činiti tu radnu grupu da bi na pravi način ovaj zakon, znači, bio kvalitetan i bio u skladu naravno sa svim onim što treba da bude. Treća stvar koja je novitet, znači da se ne ponavljamo ono što sve ponavljamo svih godina, jeste da smo malo više ušli u tu priču oko diskriminacije na poslu, tako da smo, znači, zajedno sa našim kolegama iz nevladinog sektora odlučili da se malo više posvetimo ovoj temi jer se svih ovih godina bavimo nasiljem i koliko god da se bavimo zaista još uvek nije dovoljno, ali otvaramo neka nova polja. Ovo polje je vezano, znači, za diskriminaciju na radu i, znači, imamo neke dogovore da nevladin sektor napravi neke analize vezane za, znači, iskustva osoba LGBT osoba kako prolaze u tom nekom radnom okruženju, sa kakvim sve diskriminacijama i nasiljem se susreću, a ono što je na nama, odnosno na Ministarstvu pravde, jeste da utvrdimo koje to korporacije, firme, organizacije imaju te neke unutrašnje, odnosno interne antidiskriminacione procedure kako bismo vidjeli na čemu treba da radimo. Znači, treba da radimo na tim nekim propisima koji će unaprediti radni ambijent LGBT osoba. Znači, tek smo odškrinuli ta vrata, već vidimo da tu ima puno posla za sve nas, ali korak po korak pa ćemo i tu neku oblast unaprediti. Također željela bih da kažem da se mi već kroz strategiju za unapređenje kvaliteta života LGBT osoba u Crnoj Gori koja je predviđena za period od 2019. do 2023. Konstantno bavimo edukacijama raznih ciljnih grupa koje su nam potrebne u borbi za ostvarivanje boljeg ambijenta za život, rad LGBT osoba, znači kako bismo svi bili ravnopravni u našem društvu, tako da konstantno radimo na edukacijama sudija i tužioca, odnosno tužiteljki, psihologa i psihološkinja, osoba koje su zaposlene u vojsci, u prosveti i slično, i to je jedan kontinuirani proces koji iz godine u godinu ponavljamo i nadam se da ćemo sljedeće godine, tokom polovine sljedeće godine, kada budemo napravili tu neku analizu ove naše strategije, vidjeti znači, koliko još treba da radimo, a znači svesni smo da još puno toga treba da promenimo, zato što mnoge stvari nam ne idu na ruku, kao i svima nama, znači COVID ne ide na ruku jer te vrste diskriminacije, odnosno nasilja, potiskuju i prave neke nove, nevidljiva područja gdje su nam najranjivije grupe LGBT osobe, Romi i ostali. Zatim, znači, imamo i problem što u Crnoj Gori u posljednje vrijeme, znači, otkad je došlo do promjene vlasti, došlo je do malo veće polarizacije u društvu, što također kreira jedan ambijent u kome, znači, je potrebno mnogo više napora da se uloži kako bi se napravili neki veći koraci. Kao i svi, verovatno ste i vi kao i mi u Crnoj Gori, presretni smo kad napravimo jedan korak napred, ali ono što nas malo, znači malo i obeshrabri iz razloga što mi godinama radimo na ovom području jeste što napravimo jedan korak napred, a onda nam se čini da smo 2 koraka uradili nazad. Tako da je to neka kontinuirana borba. Mi smo, znači, imamo odličnu saradnju sa kolegama i koleginicama iz nevladinog sektora, to nam jako puno pomaže u ostvarivanju svih ovih naših zajedničkih aktivnosti i također imamo odličnu saradnju sa kolegama i koleginicama iz međunarodnih organizacija i znači samo kontinuiranim naporima i samo zajedno možemo da napravimo neke korake ne samo u crnogorskom nego na čitavom ovom području o kome danas govorimo i radujem se da je ovo divna mogućnost da se svi nekako više povežemo kako bismo napravili neke dalje zajedničke korake. Hvala vam puno, ovo je bio kratki pregled aktivnosti u Crnoj Gori. Ostajem otvorena za sva pitanja koje će biti kasnije i naravno da se uključim u diskusije koje budu vezane za naredne 2 teme.
Mirjana, thank you so much. I always say that I would love for all the ministries to be like yours and also all the people that are in charge to be like you. So I'm so proud that you are here and also that you had the possibility to speak, but also to speak about many important topics that are of major importance, not only in Montenegro, but also in the region. You said a lot about, you know, the area of labor, but also the area of gender recognition, legal gender recognition, which is, I think, one of the, I would say, major issues in all our countries. And now it is my pleasure, and I'm sorry if I'm not quite vocal as as clear as I should be. My voice has a bit of difficulties today, so and it's my pleasure to now introduce Ms. Violeta Tomic, who is a member of the parliament from Slovenia. I have to say, when I was early on, when I asked whether Minister Tomic is here, it is possible that I haven't been this clear. So, and now also I have to say, and also you could see that Mr. Boris Miličić spoke on the chat or wrote on the chat. He said that the minister unfortunately had to cancel her participation, but he's here instead of her to speak about the activities of the Ministry of Human and Minority Rights and Social Dialogue from Serbia. But before we hear Serbia and before we hear another another contribution from North Macedonia. We will be happy to see and hear what Ms. Tomic has to say on behalf of the Parliament of Slovenia. Ms. Tomic, thank you so much for being here, and the floor is yours. Ms. Tomic, we can't hear you. Can you check the microphone, whether it's off or if you're well connected? Thank you so much. Still, we can't. Can you try speaking now? Nothing. Still nothing, unfortunately.
We are hearing her, but there is no translation. So we are hearing Ms. Tomic in Slovenian language, but the translation is not working, so we need the translators to translate.
Okay, so shall we then wait for just a little bit?
No, in translation, we hear the translator. Even now, for example, we hear the translator.
Okay, let's continue. So sorry.
Yeah. Jelena, maybe we could have Mr. Boris to make the intervention now, as Mrs. Tomic probably fixes her microphone. I think that is the best solution.
Amari, can you repeat again? Because I was on the translation channel, so I couldn't hear you. So sorry.
I was thinking that maybe we could give the floor to Mr. Boris, since Mrs. Tomic's microphone is having problems now, as she tries to fix it maybe.
Okay then. Okay.
A zdaj dela. Sorry, do you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, you hear me.
Yes.
Everything is okay. Okay, finally. Okay. Can I continue?
Yes, you can. Please.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, technical problems. Okay, spoštovani, I will continue in Slovenian now. Spoštovane in spoštovani, zdaj se srečujemo v časih, ki niso ravno najlepši od vseh, ki jih poznamo, in v razmerah, ko nam to težko obdobje zdravstvene epidemije, svetovnih razsežnosti, ki smo jo tudi mukoma nekako zajezili, nismo je pa obvladali. Epidemija je zelo globoko zarezala v naša življenja na vseh segmentih, tako družbe kot na osebnem segmentu, in običajno življenje, kot smo ga poznali do zdaj, je čez noč zastalo. Peljali so nam številne omejitve, svobode, ki pa nosijo s sabo tudi konfliktne odzive, kakor tudi nek upor ljudi. Znašli smo se definitivno v kriznih razmerah, ampak vselej v kriznih razmerah in v obdobjih te negotovosti, strahu in nezaupanja so vedno na udaru prve človekove pravice. In naše skupnosti so soočene z ukrepi, ki so bili sicer sprejeti za zaščito življenja in zdravja ljudi, ki pa so vendarle tudi močno posegli v človekove pravice in svoboščine in jih tudi občutno omejili. Človekove pravice pa je nedopustno, oziroma je dopustno omejevati samo z zakonskimi in zakonitimi sredstvi. To pomeni, da morajo biti omejitve vsebinsko sorazmerne, nediskriminatorne, nujne, časovno omejene ter vedno utemeljene na strokovnih dejstvih. Trenutna situacija v Sloveniji je popolnoma podrejena stanju po epidemiji in seveda naša politika je v rokah desnice. In ker v bitki za splošno okrevanje družbe ni nobenega posluha za glasove obrobnih skupin, ni prostora za priznavanje raznolikosti in nadgradnjo sistema človekovih pravic. LGBT manjšine stojijo ob strani v nekakšnem status quo kar je LGBT skupnost kot tudi mnoge druge segmente družbe žal depolitiziralo in jih prikrajšalo za emancipatorni potencial za skupne boje. Čeprav Slovenija ima formalno urejeno zakonodajo na področju zaščite pred diskriminacijo in ureditve življenjskih skupnosti LGBT, je ta mestoma zelo pomanjkljiva. Pravice interspolnih oseb pa v Sloveniji sploh ne obstajajo. Zakon o partnerski zvezi, ki je, kot vemo, življenjska skupnost dveh žensk oziroma dveh moških, sprejet aprila 2016 na podbudo moje stranke Levice, ima na vseh pravnih področjih enake pravne posledice kot zakonska zveza, razen v dveh zelo pomembnih primerih. Zakon namreč izrecno prepoveduje skupno posvojitev otroka in umetno oploditev. V 2. členu je zapisano, pa naj citiram, partnerja partnerske zveze ne moreta skupaj posvojiti otroka. Partnerja partnerske zveze nista upravičena do postopkov oploditve z biomedicinsko pomočjo. Enako določa 3. člen za partnerja nesklenjene partnerske zveze. Istospolne družine sicer obstajajo, so pa de jure in de facto diskriminirane, zato je nujna zaščita parov, kakor tudi njihovih otrok. Zakon je torej uzakonjena diskriminacija in predstavlja grobo kršitev pravic LGBT oseb in načela enakih možnosti. Druga ključna rešitev je pa zakonska prepoved oploditve žensk z biomedicinsko pomočjo. Do leta 2000 je bila ta pravica dostopna vsem ženskam, zaradi referendumske odločitve v letu 2001 pa se je omejila zgolj na ženske, ki so v zakonski ali partnerski zvezi z moškim. Samskim ženskam pa je bila ta pravica odvzeta. Celovito je treba urediti pravno priznanje spola. Sicer deluje neka medresorska delovna skupina za preučitev pravne ureditve spremembe spola, kamor je vključena tudi relevantna NVO. Maja 2020 je Komisija za medicinsko etiko pozvala k reformi zakonodaje in podala mnenje k spremembi pravilnika o izvrševanju matičnega registra. Pomembna pravica je do priznanja spola v vseh uradnih in osebnih dokumentih, in sicer na osnovi samoidentifikacije. Epidemija je navrgla tudi znaten porast nasilja nad ženskami in tudi družinskega nasilja, kakor tudi znašanja nad manjšinami, manjšinskimi skupinami, vključno z skupino LGBT. V razmahu so nestrpnost, sovražni govor, podpihovanje sovraštva do LGBT manjšin strani vladajoče politike, medijev in širše javnosti. Hud problem je in manjko učinkovitega pravnega varstva v zvezi s prepovedjo iz 63. člena ustave, ki je prepoved spodbujanja k neenakopravnosti in nestrpnosti ter spodbujanje k nasilju in vojni. Treba je zagotoviti popolno enakost, celovito dopolniti zakonodajo za kreiranje enakih možnosti LGBT ter striktne zakone za zajezitev sovražnega govora in tudi nasilja, vendar ne na račun izgube manjšinske identitete zaradi asimilacije. Let me say that unfortunately Slovenia have far-right government right now, and we are the only country who follows the path of discrimination in Poland and Hungary. Torej, če se vrnem nazaj za konec na slovenščino, danes, ko se režim pravne države maje, naj nam bo vodilo boljši in bolj pravičen jutri, ki stremi k zaščiti temeljnih vrednot humanizma, vladavine prava, človekovih pravic in tudi enakopravnosti vseh ljudi. Thank you very much.
Ms. Tomic, are you sure you're not an activist? because you surely sounded like one. You did not sound like an MP. You sounded like one of us. And I kind of, when you were speaking, you mentioned a lot of important topics. You mentioned lack of knowledge, but also tackle of the needs of the intersex community in Slovenia, which is also a matter of I think, a problem for the region as well. You also tackled one of the most important issues as well, which is, the issues that the same-sex families are encountering in their everyday life, and also the legal discrimination that you mentioned, because the same-sex families cannot adopt, or that cannot use the opportunity of the IVF, as it is banned since 2001, which is a long time. I would say that in many of our countries are also showing that the human rights can actually quite decline, and that we should constantly fight and constantly be aware of the fact that even if we encountered a certain level of achieving human rights, we shouldn't relax ourselves, or we shouldn't, be like, okay, now we've done something and we can chill a bit. Unfortunately, that's not the case, I think, nowhere in Europe or nowhere in the world. So thank you so much for speaking about all these issues. And I believe that many activists and all the others from Slovenia, but also the region, will have additional questions and maybe have additional points to discuss with you further on. Now,
can I just answer?
Yes, of course.
Until last year, I was the main rapporteur for LGBTI rights in Parliamentary Assembly Council of Europe, and it is extremely important, and I had a lot of connections, and also my right hands of experts here in Parliament are members, very active members of community and activists, of course.
Beautiful. We would love to have more parliamentarians like you.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your contribution. And now I'm puzzled just a little bit whether to give the floor again to North Macedonia, although you spoke through your very active and very important Minister Mila Carovska, or to give the floor to Serbia. Let me see. Okay, let's hear what Serbia and the Ministry of Human and Minority Rights and Social Dialogue has to say. And then I will be happy to hear Mr. Igor Jadrovski, that is coming from the Commission for Protection and Prevention of Discrimination from the North Macedonia. Igor, I hope you don't mind hearing our colleagues from Serbia, and then, of course, continue to you, as you are one of the equality bodies. So we would love to hear. Perfect. Thank you so much. Borise, from an activist to someone that actually works in the government. So are there any differences, and how is it in the Ministry of Human and Minority Rights and Social Dialogue in Serbia?
Dobar dan, Jelena, da me čujete. Čujete me? Super. Pa prvo ja bih se zahvalio na pozivu našem ministarki koja nažalost nije mogla, umjesto naše ministarke koja nažalost nije mogla danas, mi obeležavamo godinu dana vlade i ministarstva, tako da ima neke obaveze u skupštini, to je jednostavno, sinoć su je obavestili, tako da viša sila, kako to mi zovemo, ali eto, pružila se meni prilika da objasnim kako je to biti nekada u aktivizmu, a danas u izvršnoj vlasti. Pa mislim, ja se ne želim sad, mislim da to zajednica u Srbiji može mnogo bolje da iskoristi, ali ipak je mnogo više do zajednice nego do mene, pošto zajednica bi morala malo da se politički osvesti i da malo shvati koje su sve mogućnosti. Formiranje Ministarstva za ljudske i manjinske prava je bilo jasan signal vlade i države za sve manjinske grupe, za sve vulnerabilne grupe, u kom pravcu država želi da ide. Vlada Srbije i Ministarstvo na čelu sa ministrom Čomić imaju iskrenu želju, iskrenu nameru i počele to da sprovodi, da radi na poboljšanju položaja ugroženih grupa, svih ugroženih grupa, pa i LGBT zajednice. Što se tiče ministarstva, mi smo ove godine imali tu vrlo značajnu aktivnost, zakonodavnu aktivnost. Pripremili smo bili set od 3 zakona. Zakon o rodnoj ravnopravnosti, zakon o izmenama i dopunama zakona o zabrani diskriminacije i zakon o istopolnim zajednicama. Prva 2 su posredno, da kažem, indirektno omogućila poboljšanje položaja LGBT zajednice. Definisano je u zakonu o zabrani diskriminacije i definisano posebno oblik diskriminacije, zakon o diskriminaciji na osnovu rodnog identiteta. Takođe, novine u tom zakonu su definisane segregacije i zabranjene segregacije, kao i seksualno uznemiravanje, gde se isto podrazumeva da seksualno uznemiravanje nije samo, da kažem, od strane muškaraca ka ženama, već postoje i drugi slučajevi. Nažalost, mislim, što se tiče zakona o istopolnim zajednicama, mi smo završili taj deo procesa koji je u našoj nadležnosti, u nadležnosti ministarstva. Zakon je otišao ka vladi, postao je ka skupštini, to je zaglavio, moram da kažem. Šta će se dalje dešavati, vidjet ćemo. Prilikom samog donošenja predloga, odnosno nacrta, predlog je kad izađe iz vlade, stigne u skupštinu, a sad nacrt je taj dokument koji smo mi od ministarstva poslali ka vladi. Stvarno smo se kao ministarstvo trudili da prilikom donošenja izrade sva 3 zakonska predloga da budu uključeni civilni sektor. LGBT sektor aktivistički je bio vrlo uključen u donošenje nacrta, bilo je tu nekih, da kažem, i tonova, da kažem, nezadovoljstva, ali na kraju...
Borise, izvini, molim te, možeš li samo, zamolili su me prevodioci samo da primakneš mikrofon bliže svoj...
Ja sad to nešto bolje, ne znam.
Mislim da jeste. Hvala puno.
Ajde, znači, bilo je nekih tonova, da kažem, u početku, da kažem, nekog nerazumevanja, bilo nekih tonova nezadovoljstva, međutim, mislim da smo došli na kraju do jednog vrlo kvalitetnog zakonskog predloga. Ono što je bitno za ministarstvo u narednom periodu, to je osim, da kažem, insistiranje na sprovođenju i implementaciji zakona o rodnoj ravnopravnosti i zakona o zabrani diskriminacije. Biće naravno i još jedna zakonodavna inicijativa. Mi pripremamo, to jest za sledeću godinu planiramo izradu nacrta, odnosno predloga zakona o rodnom identitetu. To je za naše ministarstvo vrlo bitno pitanje. Za sada to će bude jedina zakonodavna aktivnost u narednom periodu, u narednoj godini. Pomenut je COVID, to je ne samo pomenut, nego i detaljno govoreno o njemu. To je jasno otežavajuća okolnost, ali mislim da je sve to može da se prevaziđe uz bolju saradnju, uz želju za saradnju. I da time završim, ja stvarno pozivam ne samo članice ERE, i ne samo, već i aktivisti i aktivistkinje u Srbiji. Ministarstvo za ljudska i manjinska prava i društveni dijalog je stvarno vaš saveznik. Znači, ne samo neka državna služba, neka institucija koja po sili zakona i, ne znam, po sili političke volje sarađuje sa civilnim sektorom, već ima jednu iskrenu želju i nadu da svi razumete da u nama imate saveznika i prijatelja i meni je drago lično da, eto, posle ne znam koliko godina od kada postoji ERA, da ja konačno vas vidim i na ovaj način, ne samo na društvenim mrežama, ne samo kroz medijske izvešte i da ponovim sa početka, saradnja može biti mnogo veća, mnogo bolja, kada bi i zajednice shvatila da postoje u državi Srbiji, u državnom aparatu, da postoji mnogo više ljudi, mnogo više tela koji su spremni da ne samo da saslušaju, već i da urade nešto i da pomognu da se položaj LGBT zajednice u Srbiji poboljša. Hvala.
Hvala puno, Borise. Thank you so much. I do think that the ministry actually plays a very important role, and I think that colleagues from Serbia will have something to say. Also, I have to say, I'm sorry, I'm hearing an Albanian translation in parallel to what I'm saying.
It should be okay now. It should be okay now.
Let us try. Okay. Thank you again for your contribution. I do think that the Serbian community will also have something to say on what your contribution was. I also have to have a message. Ljubav je zakon, isn't it? So, in continuing the additional contributions, we have North Macedonia and very patient Igor Jadrovski to continue with his contribution. And I thank you for being not only patient, but also accommodating the needs of the circumstances. So thank you so much, Igor, for being here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Elena. Since there are some technical difficulties with the translation, I'll try to wrap it up on English. First and foremost, let me thank you for the invitation. I'm very pleased and honored to be part of these meetings. Since I'm a firm believer that multi-stakeholder dialogue and intersectional and intergovernmental support are the best ways and most efficient ways for making positive changes in our societies. I'm coming from the Commission for Prevention and Protection Against Discrimination. As respected Minister Ms. Tsarovska said, the Commission is established under the new law on prevention and protection against discrimination in North Macedonia, which was adopted in 2020. The law itself was very positively greeted by the last report of the European Commission, stating that the law is harmonized with the European anti-discriminatory legislative. The Commission itself was established in January, so we are a relatively new body. And I'm proud to say that we are the first Commission established under the Paris Principles, which means that we are the first professional Commission for Prevention and Protection Against Discrimination, a status that we are trying to justify every day. The law itself gives the Commission a lot of broader legal powers, which means that we are not only administrative body which will act upon complaints from the citizens, but we would also like to be an active participant in drafting policies, especially exercising our preventing function, in order to prevent the discrimination, especially against LGBTI people. In terms of numbers, since we are a new body, we don't have significant numbers of complaints under the ground of sexual orientation and gender identity. The Commission acted upon 8 complaints under this ground. But what is very interesting is that we are trying to exercise our new legal powers in terms of being sending a third-party intervention to court procedures, and one of those interventions is under the grounds of sexual orientation and gender identity, and it's referred school book in the secondary education. And this is one of the most important broad legal powers of the Commission, which is participation in drafting textbooks and curricula, which incorporation, a legal power which we will exercise in cooperation with Ministry of Education. It's a very important momentum in North Macedonia, since we are drafting the new strategy national strategy on non-discrimination. And I think that it should be a very inclusive process, and the strategic path for the next 5 years must be determined in intersectional cooperation between the respected institutions and respected NGOs. We are hoping for an inclusive process, as well as the process of the drafting the law, since it was one of the most inclusive processes in the country. I also think that although the Commission now has broad legal powers, and we can act especially in preventive ways, I think that intersectional cooperation is very important, and also cooperation on a regional level with other equality bodies from the region. This is especially in terms of sharing of experiences and way of dealing with the new challenges that we are faced now, since the COVID crisis showed us that the marginalized group are now even more marginalized, and the vulnerable groups are even more vulnerable today. This is why we think, when I say we, I think the Commission, that cooperation with the civil sector is a key component in tracing our strategic path as well. The Commission is very open with cooperation with NGOs, and in our time being, we have concluded several memorandums of understanding with several NGOs that should help us to create more and better preventive policies. This is what I have to say on behalf of my institutions, and I'm open in the further session for discussion. Thank you.
Igor, thank you so much for your contribution. And I also think that the following period of time will have, it's going to witness the best practices coming from your institution as well. So thank you for that. But also now with being slightly late, right? And I'm sorry for that. We will answer the question on how can international presence in the region support the dialogue between the state and the LGBTI movement. And with us, the first to speak is Ms. Lisa Vinton, the UNDP Turkey resident representative, about who I also heard so many good things in terms of being a great ally of the community. So Ms. Vinton, I'm sorry for being this late, and also thank you for your patience. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure, especially in such a, I have to say, disheartening global context, to hear so many encouraging things about human rights, LGBT rights, and the women's rights in general. So I feel somehow uplifted today. So very happy to be here, and also to see some old friends from former assignments. I will try to keep it brief. I probably have more to say than can fit in the time, but I'll move fast. And I'm really focusing on how the UN and UN organizations like UNDP can help to protect and advance LGBTI rights. In the current situation, I am the UNDP resident representative in Turkey, but I have just arrived here. I'm only finding my feet. I'm very keen to meet members of the community and civil society organizations. So I welcome contacts from people here in Turkey who are participating in the discussion. But today I will focus on my experience in 3 countries where I've worked before Turkey. So Croatia, Macedonia, and Georgia. And I wanted to say, by way of introduction, from this experience, I have a very keen awareness that things can get better, and sometimes they can get better very, very quickly, but they can also get worse. And I have to say, this was my realization in Georgia after a sequence of positive experiences, first in Croatia, having been there during the first split Pride parade. So already Pride was an established and quite joyful occasion in Zagreb, but when the first attempt to hold a Pride march in Split on the Dalmatian coast took place in 2011, 10,000 thugs came out to almost overwhelm 200 participants in the march, and the Croatians, I think, then learned that police protection was not adequate. But then the next year, after a change of government, 6 ministers led the parade, and since then it's established now as a peaceful and normal occasion every year. And I have to say, we saw similar progress in Macedonia, and I was looking at some of my old tweets and records from today, and I found one of Biljana Ginova and Mila Tsarovs got together with the quotation, 2 years ago we were beaten by the state, now we're sitting at the same table. So we saw in Skopje that progress is possible and can be quite dramatic. But then I have to say, I'm very fresh from the experience of Georgia. I wasn't there this year in July, but I had been there for a couple of years, working very, very hard with the LGBT community to try to organize a successful Pride, but also basically to protect the rights of those who are really seriously endangered by violence. And yet, as we've seen from the outside this year, on the 5th of July, there was quite horrible violence, directed indiscriminately at activists, but also at journalists, with one fatality resulting indirectly or directly from that violence. And really the only significant prosecution to take place since then is that of the leader of Tbilisi Pride, who was called in to account for swearing at the police when they were failing to protect the organization's office from an attack by thugs. So anyway, I think we can see dramatic progress, especially when government leaders make a commitment and ensure that there's police protection, but also we can see big setbacks. And so one lesson that I have to say I personally learned from the Georgia experience is that those who want to help need to also adhere to this principle of first, do no harm, and not to create the impression that international engagement and advocacy brings with it some kind of extraordinary protection from the violence that LGBT people and activists face every day. So, but one positive note that I wanted to bring today is that, the United Nations hasn't always been clearly on the side of LGBTI rights or the community, right? But that we have seen quite a dramatic evolution. I think we're having other voices. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, very well.
Okay, sorry, I heard some other noises anyway. But what we've seen, I've been in the United Nations for 17 years now, and in that time, I think there's been a dramatic move to take a very clear position that LGBTQI rights are human rights. And we saw a big shift under Ban Ki-moon when he was Secretary General, to unambiguous statements of support. And there are a lot of interesting quotations from Ban Ki-moon, and one that he liked to repeat a lot was, growing up in Korea, we didn't talk about sexual orientation or gender identity, but as Secretary General of the United Nations, I learned to speak out because this is a matter of life and death. And I think for him, it was a very personal commitment, one that he translated into very strong advocacy, both publicly, but also in all of his interactions with heads of state. So, but I think since that time, it's become clearer and clearer that the UN's position is that LGBT rights are human rights, and that governments therefore have the obligation to protect them, as with all rights. And I think we've seen in the United Nations system, a very substantial body of tools and mechanisms for trying to advocate those rights, growing and growing since this free and equal movement was launched by the Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights in 2013. So the first formal debate in the UN took place in 2012. Free and equal was set up in 2013. The UN agencies made their first joint statement in 2015. And since then, there's a huge volume of supportive materials, campaigns, very helpful tools in my mind. At least they were helpful for me, And I think the tone from the United Nations has grown sharper as we see an increasing backlash to gender equality, to the idea of gender identity, and that I think can be helpful in the most difficult contexts. And I think the basic point that's being made here is that not just that LGBT rights are protected by human rights commitments, and that discrimination is prohibited on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, and most recently the UN has adopted the language of sex characteristics to reflect the rights of intersex persons, but that you don't need a specific convention or treaty to hold countries to account, that you can draw on the basic core materials of human rights that all countries have ratified, adhered to, going back to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights from 1948, but building on all those commitments, that there doesn't need to be something special or specific to LGBT people for their rights to be protected, or for the UN system and activists to hold governments to account. So there are a lot of different ways that this can be done, and these are efforts that are supported by UNDP and other UN agencies in countries. So, for example, working through the Universal Periodic Review, where all countries go through slowly, as the UN tends to work, but every couple of years there's a review of each country by every other country, and that's an opportunity for activists and the UN system, along with governments, to report on progress, but also for countries to come in and say, we need to see more specifically on LGBT rights. There's a special rapporteur, he's called an independent expert on protection against violence and discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity since 2018. And just 2 days ago, he issued a report, and this is where I see the sharpening tone of the UN. He issued a specific report calling for urgent action by governments and countries to push back on exclusionary rhetoric and practices that endanger human rights under this kind of argument of gender ideology. So, and one thing that this independent expert can do is make visits to countries. And this assumes that the government allows it or the government welcomes it, but there's some countries like Georgia that have issued a blanket permission for special rapporteurs and independent experts to come make country visits. And I have to say that the report that he wrote on Georgia was one of the resources that I found incredibly useful. And I think also activists would find these reports very, very useful, because it's not written in the form of a UN resolution. It's not a very carefully calibrated language. It's a very true and expert language, analytical, pulling no punches, attributing responsibility for things that have gone wrong, and issuing clear calls for action. You know, and just to quote one thing from the Georgia report, you know, he said that this is 2018, that violence, both physical and psychological, and discrimination against LGBT people are pervasive in Georgia. Beatings are commonplace, harassment and bullying constant, and exclusion from education, work, and health settings appear to be the norm. And that was some of the more mild language from that report. So I think that this can be a good resource for action. And beyond the UN mechanisms, there are other tools that we try to apply. You know, I have in other contexts, in Croatia, Macedonia, and Georgia, that using the laws and conventions, as I said, you know, these human rights conventions, but also the European Union and European Union standards can be a big ally in using them as a crowbar to try to get governments to live up to their pledges for action. There are lots of symbolic things that can be done, even in the most difficult context. I think to fly the rainbow flag, to participate in the Pride where there is one, to issue statements or to marshal the international community around specific issues. And just to note, before the disaster in Georgia, I think of this year, you know, we had managed in 2019 to issue the first international community statement in support of LGBT rights with 9 signatories plus the UN. By the next year, it was 24 signatories plus the UN. So it is possible to build a kind of an advocacy that engages more and more members of the international community. There are lots of advocacy campaigns, and I have to say one of my favorite is this Being LGBTI in Eastern Europe that UNDP did across the Western Balkans, including a short film featuring Biljana Ginova, which I like very much, of telling human stories. The UN can sometimes, in certain situations, offer a safe space for discussions and for the community to come together, something we did in Georgia unfortunately in Georgia, we also had to evacuate the UN house in this year in July when we came under attack from this terrible violence. And the UN and UN people, along with the diplomats of all kinds, can intercede both publicly and privately with government counterparts and with the church, which often is a quite imposing force in inhibiting LGBT rights. In terms of programmatic support, one thing that I find very, very helpful is to support the national human rights institutions, the ombudsperson on this issue. And I think in all these things, it's important to be sensitive to divisions and different interests in the community. What we found in Georgia was a very clear divide between those who were pushing very strongly for visibility and those who were advocating more a voice for survival and material conditions for those most threatened. And I think our role there was to say that the two aren't mutually exclusive, that it's possible to push for both at the same time. And we did step in during the COVID pandemic in Georgia to provide quite direct material support in terms of rental subsidies and things for vulnerable members of the community. There's lots of training that can be provided for civil society organizations, in particular in accessing the human rights machinery in Geneva. And finally, there are connections to be made in peer-to-peer support. So we've been very pleased to facilitate some sharing of experience among different activists across national borders and hope to do more of that. So I'm sure it's not enough, but in our experience in the limited realm that the UN occupies and UNDP, it's an area that we find to be helpful and we hope to do a whole lot more. It's good to see so much progress in some countries, others are more discouraging. But I think in all cases, there is an obligation, as we say, to stand up for human rights and to leave no one behind. So I'm looking forward to doing what we can also in Turkey. So thank you very much for your attention and look forward to a good discussion.
Ms. Hinton, thank you so much for your contribution. It has been very valuable to hear what you have to say. And I also think that the Turkish community has, was a bit lucky to have you there, completely invested in what they encounter on an everyday basis. And I hope that our Turkish fellow activists will have a say today when to kind of meet you with all the restrictions and bad things that are happening in that particular country. We know that it's a very specific place to be and a very specific place to live as a member of the community. We are also we would be very interested in your opinion on many financing policies that have been going on in Europe, especially in our region in Turkey, when we speak about LGBTI human rights, especially the things that Mr. Kalezic also mentioned before. But before we hear that, I have a pleasure to announce Ms. Evgenia Giacomopoulou, who is the head of the Council of Europe in Montenegro. And I have to say, we are lucky to have her here. So without further ado, Ms. Giacomopoulou, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's really a great pleasure to be in this company and to see the high level attendance and the quality of the interventions so far. So it's really my absolute pleasure to address you all today on behalf of the Council of Europe and perhaps to give the perspective of the cooperation on the ground. Really, as Jelena Čolaković was just mentioning, I'm based in Montenegro and we have offices of the Council of Europe in several of the countries and beneficiaries in the Western Balkans and Turkey. And I think it gives us a unique opportunity to work hand in hand with the national partners and with the civil society. So to give a bit of an assessment of a takeaway of what's working, what's not, what's been happening and what we're doing. At the moment, we have a number of programs out of which anti-discrimination is a key component, which we are enrolling at the regional and then at the specific beneficiary level. And part of that work includes, of course, the LGBTI community. And our assistance is always on 3 levels, which is legislative and policy reform, capacity building of the national institutions, and awareness raising of the general population. And all of this is done systematically hand in hand with the civil society, who I should say are primary experts. In this context, we're very proud to have accompanied a process in the region that has, in the last 10 years, roughly taken from a situation where prides were violently suppressed or banned to having registered same-sex partnerships in Croatia, Slovenia, and as of this summer, also in Montenegro. So now I have to apologize, but the picture is not so bright all the time. It's a bit bleak, and I feel like I need to kill the mood a little by stressing that unfortunately equality, real, effective, concrete, is far from being achieved. We're doing better in several countries on paper, but equality is only equality if it is not restricted to certain areas of life or to certain parts of the population. Full equality and freedom from LGBTI persons is not a reality, and some examples are the fact that rainbow families are not recognized or protected, that legal recognition of trans persons' gender identity is not effective as it is not based on self-determination and through quick, accessible, and transparent procedures as recommended by the Council of Europe standards. I was very pleased to hear that in Montenegro, a working group will be set up soon, and of course we stand very ready to support this process. But just to not even go as far as getting into the details of intersex persons' rights or understanding the patterns and the needs and the systemic issues behind lesbophobia and LGBTQ women's rights. Even just generally speaking, being LGBTI in Europe and in the Balkans today, it means facing more obstacles in accessing rights and services, in accessing justice. It means being at a higher risk than the average person of discrimination in the workplace, of being exposed to violence, of rejection by family or the environment, of exclusion and isolation, of suicide, of marginalization and precarity. And the pandemic did not help. We also see in the Western Balkans that hate speech is on the rise, and surveys have shown that attitudes remain hostile among the wider population, and that prejudices and stereotypes are still deeply rooted. And I had a very personal exposure recently when I had the possibility to attend one of our trainings with law enforcement, where when asked whether they could come up with a single positive thing to say about bisexual persons, they couldn't. At the same time, they were flowing with prejudices in the negative sense when asked what they could come up with on the basis of what society says. So in this context, our synergies amongst the international community, our coordination, and our work with the national stakeholders, and our partnerships with the civil society is key and the only way to achieve sustainable progress. In the region, we work mostly through the Horizontal Facility Program, which is a joint program between the Council of Europe and the European Union. And ERA in this and as network and its members have allowed us to work closely with the civil society and the community across the region. And that has enabled to pass on coherent and harmonized messages and to convey them adequately to the authorities. To give you some examples of what we've been doing together and illustrate this successful cooperation with ERA members. At the regional level, we've been working on strengthening the law enforcement's ability to policing hate crimes based on grounds of sexual orientation and gender identity, as well as peer-to-peer exercises for the law enforcement to exchange good practices on ensuring safety of prides or on responding to individual cases, and on improving the relationships with the civil society organizations. We're also unrolling regional and then national campaigns on blocking the hatred and sharing the love. So a campaign addressing hate speech. And at the bilateral level, we've worked closely with governments, parliaments, and of course, NGOs, and some highlights would include the Montenegro law on civil partnership adopted in June 2020. Ongoing in North Macedonia, the anticipated law on legal gender recognition. In Serbia, we've provided a legal opinion on the draft law on civil partnership. In Bosnia and Albania, we're assisting with the preparatory phases of the LGBTI action plans. And in Kosovo, we're assisting the LGBTI advisory group, notably with the provision of expertise to revamp the discussion on legal gender recognition. We have also numerous capacity building activities underway. And one important element also that should be stressed is efforts to improve data collection on hate crime against LGBTI persons, as this is still something that all countries and beneficiaries are lagging behind. So we are doing a lot, but a lot needs to be done. And one more word of caution. I think we strongly need to remain alert to the increasing challenges and threats. We cannot absolutely take even what's achieved for granted, unfortunately. We see challenges and threats to human rights at a time where there is extremely harmful impact of hateful rhetoric in several of our member states of the Council of Europe, which leads to backsliding of human rights and democratic values. To name just the so-called phenomenon of the gender equality backlash, which affects primarily women and LGBTI persons, and are one of our main and most powerful instruments adopted in the last years. The Istanbul Convention has been a main target of this movement. So this is why our actions and impact are only as strong as the political will and the political commitment of our national partners to uphold the human rights of the most marginalized communities. In order to remain relevant and to bring about sustainable change, it is fundamental that our actions contribute to establishing long-lasting partnerships and forge constructive dialogue between governments and the LGBTI civil society, both at regional and national levels. We, the international organizations and institutions, have a key role to play in bringing all those parties to the table and to facilitate this dialogue, and we will do our utmost to continue doing so. When the space for civil society is shrinking in many corners of Europe, it is also of utmost importance that governments, with the support of international organizations, actively strive to create conducive environments for the LGBTI movement to play its part. We know that in many situations, they're stepping in service provision to the community, one of the most efficient ways to create the environment is by ensuring structural funding and resources. This cannot be emphasized enough. Going forward, with the firm determination to advance together towards equality for LGBTI persons in the region, we are very grateful for the collaboration of national institutions and for the expertise and professionalism of a partner such as ERA. So I very much look forward to continuing the work that we've been doing together. And I should mention my colleagues who are doing all the heavy lifting at the regional and national levels, Ninoslav Mladenovic and Angela Longo in Serbia and in Strasbourg, that I know are also listening, and we're at your disposal to design even better solutions going forward. Thank you.
Ms. Giacomopoulou, thank you so much for your contribution. It was also inspiring for many, many thoughts of mine, and I hope for many thoughts of my colleagues from the region, but also the ones who are participating in this particular event. As far as the time is concerned, we've left with 20 minutes of questions and answers. So I definitely now open the floor for Q&A. And I definitely wanna, if I don't see you immediately, I will be scrolling to see whether you've raised your hands. And if not, we have questions. We have a lot of questions, actually. So anyone would like to raise an issue from a particular country? As far as I've been told, we have also in the participating crowd, we have people from the delegations of EU in our countries. Hopefully they are listening as well, because some of the conclusions that we drafted in the previous days of the conference that we held are related to financing and also related to practices of new old practices of the delegations in relation to financing, direct financing for organizations that are dealing with human rights of LGBTI persons. So I would also love to hear your inputs on all we have heard. No inputs whatsoever? I see no hands.
There is one.
Oh, Christian Kevesevich. Okay, please do intervene. The floor is yours.
Dobar dan, da li se čujemo? S obzirom na prevod, ne znam hoću nastaviti na hrvatski ili da s engleskim krenem. Uglavnom, ja se javljam iz Ureda pravobraniteljice za ravnopravnost spolova iz Republike Hrvatske i htio bih samo kratko prokomentirati ovaj proces. Vidim da je pred drugim državama proces donošenja zakona o životnom partnerstvu, odnosno partnerstvu osoba istog spola, pa čisto da iz naše perspektive damo jedan presjek našeg iskustva. Naime, mi zakon o životnom partnerstvu osoba istog spola imamo na snazi još od 2014. godine, međutim, evo, pokazalo se i da i dan danas povremeno se suočavamo s poteškoćama u njegovoj implementaciji, koje bi rekao da se sastoje prije svega u pojedinim zakonskim definicijama, odnosno definicijama u pojedinim drugim zakonima gdje može doći do izražaja da li su osobe istog spola prepoznate i kroz provedbene propise, konkretno mislim na pravilnike. Mi smo kao tijelo za jednakost u Republici Hrvatskoj i za borbu protiv diskriminacije u odnosu na ravnopravnost spolova gdje spada i spolna orijentacija kao osnova, imali niz situacija gdje smo reagirali prema nadležnim tijelima i izdavali upozorenja i preporuke da se podzakonski propisi usklade sa zakonom o životnom partnerstvu, s obzirom da je od toga kod nas to zakon takozvane organske snage. Druga stvar koja je vrlo važna pritom je i inkluzivnost društva i to je nešto što je i u novoj strategiji Europske unije za ravnopravnost LGBTIQ osoba prepoznato kao jedan od glavnih stupova. Također ta inkluzivnost je povezana i sa pitanjem zločina iz mržnje i javnog poticanja nasilja na mržnju, jer znamo da kod nas barem postoji dosta visok postotak osoba koje su iskusile nasilje, odnosno zločine iz mržnje ili javno poticanje nasilja i mržnje, odnosno govor mržnje, kolokvijalno rečeno, međutim nisu skloni prijavljivanju. Stoga je bitno konstantno raditi na povjerenju i kada takva prijava bude zaprimljena, vrlo je važno poduzeti učinkovite istrage. Naime, mi kao država smo imali nekoliko puta problema upravo u toj fazi da se nije adekvatno reagiralo na prijave i da nisu poduzimane učinkovite istrage, zbog čega je i nekoliko postupaka bilo pred Europskim sudom za ljudska prava. Znači, osim samog donošenja zakona, vrlo je važno imati na umu njegovu implementaciju kroz podzakonske propise i stvarati konstantno inkluzivnije društvo. Evo, toliko iz naše perspektive. Hvala vam na pozivu i drago mi je da smo mogli sudjelovati. Poštovanje.
Thank you so much, Christian, for your contribution. It was very valuable to hear about the practices of the Ombudsman Office in Croatia. And we also fully agree on certain issues that you named, how we have to deal with, you know, always and constantly emphasizing the importance of reporting all the incidences and all the crimes that are happening to the community. And that's a big portion of what is happening further on. But also, on top of that, we also have to mention the responsibility of the police force, but also prosecution and judiciary to read the laws accurately and also use the opportunities that the laws are providing. In Montenegro, for example, we also have a lot of issues with implementing a certain provision from the criminal law that actually is related to hate crime. It has been used less than necessary. But thank you so much for what you said. It was an important motivation for me to also emphasize this particular matter that I just said. Any other contributions from the participants? Maybe. Oh yes, Snežana from Macedonia, North Macedonia, and then Mitja Blažić. That's the order. Please, Snežana, the floor is yours.
Прво да ги поздравам сите учесници, јас ќе зборувам на македонски јазик. Навистина е задоволство да се биде дел од еден ваков форум каде што дискутираме за нешто што е најсуштинско, а тоа се човековите права. Човековите права се почеток на се и круна на се. И без човекови права, почитувањето на човековите права, воопшто не можеме да говориме за никакви цивилизацијски придобивки или за едно развиено општество. Корисни се сите дискусии. Мене ми е драго што се сподели информации за одреден напредок што се однесува особено во делот на законската регулатива, но очигледно дека има уште многу што да се работи, а јас би рекла дека два основни правци се тие кои што треба да ни бидат водилка во периодот кој што следи. Тоа е првенствено строго придржување на механизмите и разработка на нови механизми во делот на имплементацијата и на законската регулатива, како на домашната, така и на меѓународната, бидејќи тоа е всушност, би рекла, многу поголем проблем од она што значи законска регулатива. Бидејќи ако тргнеме од она што е во самите устави на нашите држави, пропишано и во самите закони, секако мислам дека ќе се согласиме сите дека проблемот не е толку изразен. Да, имаме се уште дел од законска регулатива која треба да биде донесена или подобрена постоечката законска регулатива, кога станува збор за особено за истородни полови заедници, кога станува збор за правата на наследување, здравствените права и така натаму, но јас сакам само да кажам тука дека кога говориме за имплементација, борбата треба да ја водиме и формално и неформално. Значи, формално е преку институциите во државата, со вистинска стратегија и вистинска посветеност, за тоа ни треба волја и разработка на механизми кои што сите во државата треба да ги почитуваат, и законодавно-правната власт тука има исклучителна улога. Јас сум затоа среќна што без разлика на сите потешкоти во нашиот парламент, во Собранието на Република Северна Македонија, групата за поддршка на LGBTI заедницата заедно со невладиниот сектор успеавме во последните 2-3 години да направиме вистински исчекор и навистина верувам дека ако продолжиме во тој правец преку надзорната улога на работата на Народниот правобранител, на Комисијата за заштита од дискриминација, и на сите други институции државни кои што всушност се и должни да доставуваат извештај до собранието, тогаш мислам дека ќе го постигнеме саканиот ефект. Но има уште нешто друго за кое што исто така беше спомнато и тука ќе завршам, дека никогаш не треба да сме задоволни од постигнатото и да мислиме дека треба да се опуштиме, бидејќи примерот на нашата држава во минатото покажа дека стекнатите права можат многу лесно преку ног да бидат загрозени, па дури и изгубени. затоа мораме да бидеме обединети во она што значи прогрес, а не во она што значи регрес. Многу е важно да прогресивните политики преовладаат во регионот, особено и секако во цела Европа и во целиот свет. Затоа, уште еднаш ќе кажам, ова е вистинскиот начин за борбата која што е долгорочна, но само така можеме да постигнеме успех. Ви посакувам уште еднашка се најубаво и се надевам дека ќе имаме прилика и во живо да се видиме.
We would love to have this opportunity for sure. I would love to meet you in person, especially after your beautiful speech. And I think that, well, this world will be a so much better place with more of you in it. Although, as you said, it's really, really important not to relax or not to just chill when the fight needs continuance on so many levels. And I hope that you will be able to influence your colleagues, MPs from other countries in the region, Montenegro in particular, why not? Mitja Blažić, another MP from Slovenia. It's a pleasure.
It's not MP. I'm sorry, I'm just working as the advocate of the principle of equality. So, but nevertheless, it's an important institution.
It is. It is. And I apologize for my mistake. My information was not accurate, but I have to say then that the local institutions are also equally important. You know, we have to use this, green, think locally, act globally, right? The green, this particular proverb of theirs, I think. So yes, thank you, Mitja, for being with us, and please have your contribution in peace without me interfering. So,
okay, I just have a question actually. First of all, thank you for the beautiful and inspiring speeches and contributions of all the panelists. And then I was interested in two things in the laws regulating legal gender recognition and rights of intersex person, because I heard that in many countries in the region, there are these laws that are being drafted right now. So I would like to know if I can have the information in which countries are these laws starting to being drafted, and if there is any documents that we can access or share regarding legal gender recognition and the rights of intersex persons.
I can tell about Montenegro, or my colleague Daniel Kalazic can, but also we've drafted the law, and this particular document is available upon request, so we can actually send it to you. I think that we can also, I think that it's even translated, but I'm not sure, I have to be honest. Still, if you understand other languages in the region, you can actually get it without any obstacle, for sure. We've presented this particular piece of document to all to some of the ministries. Ministry of Justice, Human Minority Rights was participating at a panel that was related to this legal gender recognition piece of document or legislation that we devised along with our partners, Queer Montenegro, Juventus, and Spectra, which is an organization that deals primarily with the human rights of the TIGV community. Also was very much involved in creating a document that is based on self-determination, but also relying on all the principles that are, the positive principles devised by the Council of Europe, but also the European Union, so we can share it for sure. As far as other countries in the region, I think that I'm not sure. I will, Amari, if you have any knowledge on anyone else providing this document or having this document, please, you can add on what I already said.
Yes, of course. I believe that it would be more appropriate for my colleague Biljana, because they also coordinate the trans non-binary intersex caucus in ERA. So Biljana, is it okay if you do it? Great.
So Biljo, please. Yes.
Yes, yes. We have some documents in our small database. So I have your email, Mitya, so I will share them directly.
Okay, Mitya, thank you for your question. Anyone else, maybe? We have 5 minutes left. Okay, Amari, would you mind maybe sharing some of the main conclusions related to sustainability and resilience that we come up with, especially during these past days of ERA's conference? It's so important, especially for our international partners and allies, but also the delegations of EU and their representatives, to hear what we come up with, but also to kind of raise the issue of, again and again, of sustainability of many organizations that are dealing with LGBTI human rights in the region. So Amari, again, the floor is yours.
Sure. Thank you, Jelena. I will do a small screen share just to make it a little bit easier for everybody to read. This is the last activity, as I said in the beginning, of our annual conference, and last week we had 4 panels where we discussed a lot of the, let's say, recent challenges that our movement and our communities are facing across the region. So it has become very clear that the COVID pandemic and all the measures, as was mentioned also earlier, have had a huge effect on the activism, on the ability to self-organize, to express, to campaign, to change public attitudes. We also have nowadays even bigger issues than before, with increased misinformation, with fake news, so-called fake news, and with a lot of anti-LGBTI and anything that is against, sexual and health and reproductive rights and gender issues and gender equality and LGBTI issues. With regards to resilience, LGBTI community organizers and organizations are struggling. We have information that a lot of the organizations are either suffering a lot right now, or they expect to have very big challenges as of next year. We also have very clear information from different resources that funding, a big chunk of international funding, including here also from the EU, is more and more being directed towards international multilateral organizations and mechanisms. And as we heard from very good friends and allies and partners from these institutions, the work they're doing is really amazing and immense. So our statement here is not necessarily against them and the work that they're doing, but is the fact that we are concerned that civil society organizations are being overlooked, and that direct funding from major funders towards them, including the EU, is not adequate, is not enough, and it's not answering to the needs that the organizations have. Here we also have very big challenges when it comes to government funding. Unfortunately, in our region, it's not yet a practice that civil society organizations are seen as an extension, of government services, particularly something which is very common and a good practice in many European states, for example, especially in the West and the North. Whereas here in our region, funding is minimal, and it's not responding at all to the needs of the community. And also for the LGBT organizations, it's been very hard with the pandemic to focus on all areas. A lot of the donor community still expects organizations to focus on advocacy, on legal changes, on policy changes, on this kind of activities. But the community and the organizations in the meantime need more support when it comes to delivering of services. And big challenges are with regards to services such as those related to health, such as, for example, HIV, mental health and well well-being, legal aid and support, psycho-emotional support, and support with other means. Here are some of the recommendations with regards to that. Of course, we need more dialogue with the donor community. We need, we have platforms such as the networks, such as ERA, that can also be serving a role in increasing access to funding for local LGBTI organizations. But also states need to understand that organizations, and I'm very happy we have so many stakeholders in the meeting today to send this message to them, that LGBT organizations across the region, they feel big gaps that state institutions cannot yet fulfill. So developing sustainable partnerships with them within frameworks that are approved by law and policy, it would be a very welcome step forward for all of us. I don't want to keep it too long because the time is already very short. So we do have big challenges when it comes to hate crimes and hate speech, with underreporting as well. And we need to really across the region increase efforts for more trainings of prosecutors and judges, and to see more cases going to, being taken up by prosecutors, and more cases going to the courts, and more decisions, because we also feel that this is the area where a lot needs to be done, and that is why we still have so much hate speech and so many crimes, because there is this strong sense of impunity among the general public that you can do whatever you want to LGBTI people, you have the support of everyone. So we need to change that, and that needs to be done through all the branches of the justice system. The anti-gender movement is the last part I will mention. Some of you might have heard of this term, some might have not, but basically anti-gender movement is not a single entity, but is different forces from political, from the far right, especially to many religious institutions and clergy and other groups, often even in NGO sector, not LGBTI, but generally in NGO sector, who perpetuate constantly very strong negative messages against anything that comes that concerns sexual and gender rights, such as LGBTI people, but also women's rights, their adoption rights, and so on and so forth. And here we have a new phenomenon in the sense, in some countries of the region, this is not a new phenomenon at all, but in some countries we are seeing these things happening for the first time only in the last few years. In some other countries, this anti-gender movement is very well established, it's very well funded, and I think I could even see from some of the government representatives who are saying that we are encountering now new difficulties, because it is reflected also in their ability to do their work without being attacked by the media and by political parties and politicians and clergy. So we need to work together to discuss, to address this issue with other human rights defenders, the media, the governments. We need to work more on information and education to counteract all the false narratives that are perpetuated currently against women and LGBTI people and other minorities, and to also change narratives and to work on that, and as well to look into providing more financial support, because we also learned that a lot of organizations don't necessarily have capacities or resources to deal with this new backlash. And again, new in some countries and not so new in others, but with this big backlash that endangers the work of the NGOs, endangers their efforts with the public, endangers the government's efforts to change laws and policies, and does so much unnecessary damage. So yeah, in a nutshell, I think these are the main conclusions of our meeting, and we can share these with you also via email. But we want to raise the awareness of institutions that, these issues, sustainability, access to justice and services and health services, and the anti-gender movement are some of the main problems that the community is facing across the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Amari. And it's time for us to part. But before we do so, I have to say that these conclusions are not something that we will just put on a presentation or on paper, and that's it. We don't have time to discuss them even further, but it's very, very important, especially for, you know, the stakeholders from the institutions like, or organizations from like UNDP or Council of Europe and delegations of EU throughout the region, to hear them out and to actually understand them quite seriously, or to take them quite seriously, because it is, as Amari said, as Daniel also said in his introductory speech, it is a common thing to completely ignore the activities and the work of the organizations that are doing the LGBTI human rights work in the region, and to kind of distribute the funds to other major players in the region, which are the offices of UNDP or Council of Europe, therefore completely ignoring the work that we've done so far. As you know, the network is going to do a lot of things in the future. We will hold a lot of meetings also with all the interested parties, but also with all the stakeholders, important stakeholders in the region. And we will be able to kind of, I hope, continue the dialogue on this matter, in particular, because, as you know, our work and everything that we do depends on our sustainability, or the sustainability of the services we provide. Finally, and ultimately, the communities we work for and work with also depend on this particular sustainability, because many of the services we are providing are not included in the system of the countries we are working and living in. So I plea on all involved in this particular process to hear us out, and again, take us very, very seriously. As I said, it's not going to remain on a PowerPoint or on the paper. In case, I'm gonna let you give your thank you so much, Evgenia. I'm gonna let you have your final thoughts and comments in 2 minutes, presented in 2 minutes or 3 minutes tops. Otherwise, if you don't have them, it was a very great pleasure to have you and to speak with you and to have this dialogue, but also to completely and to meet some of you also, and with the hope that we will meet in person at a certain point, if Corona allows it. So let me see. Okay, we have some written contributions. Oh, from Ms. Tomic, do you want to comment? Please do. If you have, if I understood correctly, the signals that you gave.
No, it looks like they are talking with someone else.
Okay, then. Okay. Are you sure? Okay. Okay. It was a pleasure. Have a great rest of the day. And as I said, I hope we'll meet in person at a certain point. Bye.